In the city of stars, where dreams are sold and reputations are built in an instant, one story brought Los Angeles to a sudden halt. On a warm September evening in 2025, inside a Hollywood tow yard filled with abandoned cars, police opened the trunk of a sleek black Tesla. What they found inside was something no one could have prepared for: the decomposed body of a missing teenage girl, wrapped in plastic, hidden from view, and long forgotten by those who were supposed to be looking for her. The car was not just any vehicle. It was registered to one of music's fastest rising stars, David Anthony Burke, known to millions around the world as D4VD. The discovery was as shocking as it was tragic, and the question that followed was immediate. How did a teenage girl vanish from her community only to be discovered months later in the trunk of a celebrity's car? The revelation rippled across the globe in a matter of hours. Fans who once sang along to his melancholic lyrics were left speechless. News outlets scrambled to cover the unfolding case, while investigators were suddenly at the center of one of the most high-profile mysteries in recent memory. This was not just another Hollywood headline. This was the real story of Celeste Rivas Hernandez, a 15-year-old girl from Lake Elsinore whose disappearance in April 2024 was quietly noted in local bulletins, but largely ignored beyond her community. For her family, her absence had been an open wound for over a year. For her neighbors, she was a familiar face suddenly gone without explanation. But now, in September 2025, her story would take on a chilling international dimension. The discovery of her body did not simply tie a local missing person case to a pop star. It opened the door to deeper questions. Who was Celeste? What was her relationship, if any, to D4VD? How did her remains end up inside his car? And most of all, what had happened in the long stretch of time between her last confirmed sighting and her tragic recovery? At first glance, it seemed like the kind of story tabloids thrive on: celebrity scandal, a mysterious death, and an audience hungry for answers. But for investigators, this was something far more delicate. It was a homicide investigation, with all the weight of forensic science, chain of custody, and legal responsibility bearing down on them. For the Rivas family, it was the devastating conclusion to a search that had lasted too long. For the world, it became a haunting reminder that beneath the glittering surface of fame, unimaginable realities can be hidden in plain sight. In this documentary, we'll reconstruct the events step by step, from Celeste's life in Lake Elsinore to the last days before she disappeared, to the extraordinary moment her body was identified inside that Tesla. We'll follow the police investigation, the media storm, the online speculation, and the unanswered questions that linger still. But first, let's understand how this discovery was even made. On September 8, 2025, a Tesla Model 3, parked illegally in Hollywood Hills, was towed to a local impound yard. Tow workers noticed an odor, one that grew stronger each day. After repeated complaints, police officers responded. When they lifted the hood of the car, the frunk, as Tesla owners call it, they found what no one expected: human remains wrapped in black plastic. The Los Angeles County Medical Examiner later confirmed the body belonged to Celeste Rivas, a girl reported missing more than a year earlier. From that moment forward, the story would dominate headlines, not just because of the tragedy of a young life cut short, but because of the name attached to the car. The Tesla was registered to a singer whose career was on the rise, whose songs had millions of streams, and who just weeks earlier had been preparing for his latest tour. David Anthony Burke, better known as D4VD, was no stranger to the spotlight. His songs carried themes of melancholy and longing. His fans, many of them teenagers themselves, saw him as both mysterious and relatable. Now, those same fans faced a disturbing contradiction: their idol's name attached to the death of someone their age. Authorities were cautious. They did not immediately name Burke a suspect. They stated clearly that the investigation was ongoing, that more forensic tests were needed, and that the presence of Celeste's body in the car did not necessarily implicate the singer directly. But in the court of public opinion, speculation spread like wildfire. Some fans defended him fiercely, saying he was being set up or framed. Others questioned how such a tragedy could possibly occur without his knowledge. News outlets analyzed every public statement, every past performance, and every detail of his personal life. Meanwhile, Celeste's family grieved in silence. They had filed missing person reports. They had waited for answers, and now they were confronted with a truth no parent should ever face. This was not just about one artist, not just about one team. It was about the systems that failed her, about missing children overlooked by media coverage, about the blurred boundaries between celebrities and their admirers, and about the dangers that can lurk just beneath the glamorous surface of Hollywood. The story of Celeste and the car trunk in Hollywood forces us to ask hard questions. Who failed her? What really happened in those missing months? And how close to the truth are we willing to get? Today, we retrace every step. We look at the girl whose life was cut short, the singer whose fame became entwined with tragedy, and the investigation that continues to search for answers. This is the story of the teen found in singer D4VD's car trunk. She was 15 years old. Her name was Celeste Rivas Hernandez. She grew up in Lake Elsinore, a small city in Riverside County, a community of neighborhoods, schools, and afternoon routines that until this moment felt far removed from the national headlines now bearing her name. For those who knew her, Celeste was not a story on the internet. She was a classmate, a neighbor, a daughter. The details compiled by investigators and reported by local news paint the outline of an ordinary life that, without warning, ended in a way no family should face. According to official records released by county authorities, Celeste had been reported missing on April 5, 2024. That missing person report, filed in Riverside County, marked the last time anyone outside her immediate circle could confirm where she was. In the months that followed, her absence remained largely a local concern, noted in police logs and by family and friends who searched, called, and hoped for a return that never came. When investigators finally identified the remains, pulled from the front trunk of an impounded Tesla in Hollywood, the Los Angeles County medical examiner confirmed the decedent as 15-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez. The office described the body as severely decomposed, which complicated the process of determining an exact time and cause of death. At the time of identification, officials said the cause of death remained pending further forensic analysis. Those official determinations would guide what came next in the investigation. In life, Celeste's circle was the kind of small, tangible network common to many teenagers. Classmates at school, neighbors, and family members who remembered her for everyday things. The way she walked to the bus stop, the afternoons she spent near neighborhood shops. Community members who later spoke at memorials and vigils described her as quiet and kind, a girl whose absence was noticed and mourned by people who knew her long before the story became a national headline. Those remembrances framed the human cost behind the official records and helped communities that felt removed from Hollywood find a way to grieve. The medical examiner's report, as reported by multiple outlets, included details that would feed public attention. Celeste was described as roughly 5'1" or 5'2", with wavy black hair. She was found wearing a tube top and black leggings, with a yellow metal bracelet and metal stud earrings. Investigators also noted a tattoo on her right index finger that read, "Shh." That tattoo detail, confirmed in official release language, later became a focal point of online discussion when observers noted a similar ink on an image of another individual connected by vehicle registration. Because the tattoo is not rare among public figures, authorities warned against drawing conclusions solely from that similarity. Friends and neighbors recall Celeste's last known rhythms in small, specific ways that make the missing months feel painfully long. In interviews, people who saw her over the months before her disappearance described ordinary routines: school mornings, walking through local streets, and then the abrupt absence that no neighbor could explain. Those quiet accounts, carried in local reporting and community vigils, became the emotional backbone for a family waiting for answers. Records and reporting also show that Celeste's disappearance did not immediately capture the nation's attention. Missing person cases, particularly involving teenagers, are sadly common. Many remain undercovered until a new development forces a broader focus. In Celeste's case, that development came months later, a discovery in an entirely different county, and with it a rush of scrutiny, that would place her life and her family's grief under intense public light. The contrast between how her case began and how it unfolded speaks to differences in media visibility and how certain facts propel a story beyond local boundaries. Because the medical examiner described the remains as severely decomposed, reconstructing Celeste's final hours has been especially difficult. Decomposition obscures many of the physical clues that forensics rely upon to set precise timelines and causes. Investigators must therefore combine the coroner's scientific work with digital records, phone data, surveillance footage, witness interviews, and any physical evidence recovered from vehicles and residences connected to the investigation. That methodical and sometimes painstaking process is how cold facts begin to assemble into a coherent timeline. Social media and digital avenues also played a role in tracing her recent history. In the days after the identification, videos and photos circulated online showing Celeste at public events and, according to some posts and accounts, at performances in Los Angeles during the year prior to her death. Clips and images posted by users on streaming and social platforms drew investigators' attention and fed public speculation about who she associated with in the months before she vanished. Reporters emphasized and investigators reiterated that social media material can provide leads but must be corroborated and matched against verified records. For Celeste's family, the identification of her remains was the closing of a terrible loop and the beginning of new ordeals. The logistics of funeral arrangements, the publicness of grief, and the effort to protect their privacy while law enforcement continued to investigate. Community vigils sprang up in Lake Elsinore. Candles, photos, and handwritten notes assembled by people who remembered a child, not a headline. Family members set up a GoFundMe to cover memorial expenses, a move that also reflected how ordinary people cope when personal tragedy collides with national attention. As the investigation continued, every fragment of Celeste's life, school records, last confirmed sightings, phone logs, social media posts, and witness statements became a piece of evidence investigators would use to map the months she was missing. In cases where decomposition obscures forensic clarity, these human traces often prove decisive. For the family, the goal was straightforward: to know what happened to Celeste and to see justice pursued for a child who vanished from her community and was later found far from home. There are facts that remain certain and others that remain alleged. The date of her reported disappearance, the identity provided by the coroner, the description of her clothing and tattoos, and the release of her remains to her family after identification. Those are documented, verifiable points in the public record. Details that connect individuals to one another. The nature of any relationship between Celeste and people whose property or vehicles intersect with this inquiry are still part of an active investigation. Where reports differ or rely on unverified social posts, those claims should be treated as alleged until confirmed by law enforcement or forensic evidence. As we move forward with this story, we carry Celeste's name with us, not as a headline, but as a person. A teenager whose absence galvanized a family's search, and whose identification has set a larger, complicated investigation in motion. The facts that follow must be handled with care. Some are settled in official reports and medical records. Others are circulating as allegations that investigators will either confirm or dismiss in the days ahead. This leads us to who D4VD is. David Anthony Burke, known worldwide by his stage name D4VD, is one of the newest voices in American music. Born in Queens, New York in March 2005, Burke's career is a story that seemed impossible only a few years ago. A teenager uploading songs recorded in his sister's closet suddenly catapulted to global attention. His rise was powered not by traditional industry pipelines, but by the unpredictable currents of social media. By 2022, at just 17 years old, Burke had crafted a sound that resonated with millions online. His breakout single, Romantic Homicide, went viral on TikTok, quickly spreading to streaming platforms where it racked up tens of millions of listens within weeks. The song, moody and atmospheric, struck a chord with listeners who felt the lyrics mirrored their own experiences of heartbreak and detachment. Critics noted that the track's success was unusual in its simplicity. Recorded on GarageBand with minimal equipment, It had none of the gloss of a studio hit, but it carried emotional weight. That weight became Burke's artistic signature. In the months following the viral moment, labels took notice. Burke signed with Interscope Records, aligning himself with the infrastructure of mainstream music. He released the EP Petals to Thorns in 2023, followed by The Lost Petals. Both extended his aesthetic, introspective lyrics, shadowy visuals, and themes of longing, separation, and mortality. Fans embraced him not only for his songs, but for the aura of mystery he maintained. He rarely overshared on social media, preferring to let the music speak for him. Burke's public persona combined a carefully cultivated distance with an intimate resonance in his lyrics. Listeners, particularly teenagers, felt they understood him because the songs expressed what they could not put into words themselves. This created a paradoxical closeness. He was a figure both distant and familiar, unknown and yet emotionally accessible. That paradox is part of why his audience grew so quickly. By late 2023 and into 2024, D4VD was touring, appearing at festivals, and collaborating with well-known artists. The industry described him as one of the most promising young names in alternative pop. The press often emphasized his youth. A boy who had been making Fortnite highlight videos just 2 years earlier was now commanding stages in Europe and the United States. His story fit neatly into a narrative of digital age stardom. That is why, when his name suddenly appeared in connection with the discovery of a teenager's body in Hollywood, the contrast felt so jarring. For fans, the association seemed unthinkable. For investigators, it was an unavoidable fact. The car in which Celeste Rivas's remains were found was registered to him. That registration record was confirmed by law enforcement, though police cautioned immediately that registration alone does not establish who last drove or accessed the vehicle. It is important here to draw the line between what is established and what is alleged. It is established that the Tesla Model 3 in question was registered under Burke's name. It is established that the body of Celeste was discovered inside its front trunk in September 2025. It is established that the Los Angeles Police Department is investigating the case. What is not established is any direct evidence connecting Burke personally to Celeste's disappearance, death, or the placement of her body in the vehicle. As of the latest official statements, police had not named him a suspect and had emphasized that their investigation was ongoing. Any further claims circulating online about his involvement should be treated as allegations only, unless corroborated by law enforcement. Still, the association alone altered his public image overnight. Fans and critics flooded platforms with speculation. Some pointed to his lyrical themes, claiming they revealed something hidden about his worldview. Others defended him fiercely, noting that lyrics and art should not be confused with actions. In the fevered pace of online commentary, nuance was often lost. Journalists covering the story noted the speed at which conspiracy theories spread. On TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube, users dissected his music videos frame by frame, searching for supposed clues. Some even linked imagery from his videos, dark rooms, shadowed figures, lines about loss, to the real-world case. Music scholars and psychologists who were interviewed reminded audiences that art is not evidence, but in the realm of public opinion, speculation often outruns fact. Meanwhile, Burke's team remained largely silent in the immediate aftermath. His official channels stopped posting. Concert dates listed months earlier were suddenly in question. In the absence of a clear statement, the silence itself became part of the narrative, interpreted by some as caution and by others as guilt. The broader industry also felt the shock. Burke had been positioned as one of the voices to watch in alternative pop. His trajectory seemed steady. Viral success, label support, festival stages. Now his name was appearing in police reports. For record executives, collaborators, and even fans, the collision of art and tragedy created an atmosphere of uncertainty. Could his career survive the association, regardless of what investigators ultimately determine? It is worth remembering that the history of celebrity culture is filled with moments where fame collides with scandal, sometimes unfairly, sometimes deservedly. In Burke's case, the difference between those two outcomes will rest on evidence. The Los Angeles Police Department has reiterated that they are analyzing forensics from the vehicle, phone records, surveillance footage, and witness statements. Until those findings are public, Burke remains a figure at the center of attention, but not formally accused. And yet, in the court of public opinion, timing matters. For Celeste's family, the fact remains that her body was found in his car. For millions of fans, the fact remains that his music was part of their lives long before this story. For the investigators, the challenge is to cut through speculation and establish what actually happened. At this stage of the story, one thing is clear. D4VD is no longer just a rising singer-songwriter. He is now a name forever linked to an unsolved tragedy. Whether that link is incidental or central is a question the investigation must answer. Until then, his career, his image, and his legacy hang in the balance, caught between fame and a mystery that is still unfolding. The discovery, on September 8, 2025, at a private tow yard in Hollywood, California, an ordinary call set off a chain of events that would capture global attention. It began not with flashing lights or breaking news, but with something far less dramatic: a vehicle parked illegally in the Hollywood Hills. According to law enforcement records, the car, a black Tesla Model 3, was flagged and removed. Like countless other vehicles in Los Angeles, it was transported quietly to an impound lot, waiting to be claimed by its registered owner. But unlike most cars, this one carried a hidden reality inside. Tow yard workers later reported that in the days following the car's arrival, they noticed a strong odor. At first, it was dismissed as trash left behind or perhaps spoiled food. But as the smell intensified, staff grew alarmed. Several described it as unmistakable, the scent of decomposition. They alerted authorities. What followed was not routine. When officers arrived at the lot, they examined the car closely. According to the Los Angeles Police Department, the decision was made to access the vehicle's front trunk, the compartment unique to Teslas, often used for storage. It was there that officers uncovered what no one had expected: a body wrapped in black plastic, severely decomposed. That discovery transformed what had been a standard towing procedure into the opening scene of a criminal investigation. At first, the identity of the body was unknown. Decomposition made visual recognition impossible. Investigators immediately turned to forensic processes. The remains were transferred to the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner Coroner's Office, where teams began the delicate work of analysis. It would take several days, but the conclusion came back with certainty. The body belonged to 15-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, the teenager reported missing from Lake Elsinore, Riverside County, in April 2024. Officials confirmed the identification publicly, emphasizing two things. 1, Celeste's family had been notified. 2, the cause of death was still pending further investigation. The fact that she had been missing for more than a year added both gravity and complexity. Families of missing children live in a limbo that few can understand. For Celeste's parents, the phone call from authorities ended one chapter of waiting but opened another. A chapter defined by grief, anger, and the pursuit of justice. The Tesla in which Celeste's remains were found was registered to David Anthony Burke, known in music as D4VD. This detail was confirmed by law enforcement. However, LAPD officers were clear in their early statements: registration does not automatically equal direct involvement. Many vehicles are borrowed, lent, or accessed by others. Still, that single fact, the link to a rising celebrity, turned a tragic case into a global headline. In less than 24 hours, news outlets from Los Angeles to London carried the story. Social media users speculated wildly. Some pointed to Burke's lyrics, others to online photos, still others to fragments of social media posts that might or might not have shown Celeste in the months before she vanished. Investigators, however, urged caution. This is an active investigation, LAPD officials stated. We will not speculate beyond what evidence shows. Inside the tow yard, workers who first raised the alarm became unexpected witnesses to history. In interviews, some described the uneasy feeling as the smell grew stronger each day. They said they had seen abandoned cars before, but never something like this. One tow yard employee recalled standing back as officers opened the Tesla's front compartment. He said the moment was silent. No one spoke as the reality sank in. It was a discovery that would stay with them for life. For LAPD officers on the scene, the shock was real, but the procedure was practiced. Crime scene protocol took over. Photographs, evidence bags, and notes were carefully recorded. The car was sealed and transported under official custody. From that moment on, every movement of the vehicle and its contents would be documented, ensuring chain of custody for future legal proceedings. Forensic challenges. The body was described as severely decomposed, a condition that posed immediate difficulties for medical examiners. Decomposition can obscure signs of trauma, complicate toxicology results, and limit the ability to pinpoint time of death. Still, forensic experts have tools. DNA confirmation matched Celeste to her family. Dental records were compared. Tattoos provided another level of identification. Officials described her clothing, a tube top, black leggings, jewelry, and a tattoo on her finger reading "shh," details later cited in reports and community memorials. As of the latest updates, the cause of death remained under investigation. Toxicology reports, tissue samples, and skeletal analysis would all be considered. Until those results were final, the official cause could not be determined. When the call came to Lake Elsinore, Celeste's family received the news no parent ever wants. Their daughter, missing for more than a year, had been found, but not alive. Friends and neighbors later described the grief as overwhelming. Vigils formed quickly. Photos of Celeste were taped to poster boards, candles lit sidewalks. Messages of remembrance appeared online. Her family also faced an immediate public spotlight. The same outlets that had ignored her disappearance in 2024 now sought comments, interviews, and reactions. Relatives asked for privacy, even as supporters organized online fundraisers to help with funeral costs. The news spread with unusual speed. Part of it was the tragic nature of the case. A young girl missing, now found in horrific circumstances. But part of it was the name connected to the car. Fans of D4VD were stunned. Some rushed to his defense, arguing that registration did not prove involvement. Others demanded explanations. Hashtags trended. Videos speculating about his connection to Celeste filled TikTok feeds. Within hours, the discovery had transformed from a local tragedy into a global talking point. One of those moments where the boundaries between celebrity culture, law enforcement, and public grief collapse into a single story. Investigators' next steps. After the body was found, LAPD detectives launched a comprehensive investigation. Their first priorities: forensic analysis of the vehicle, review of surveillance footage in the area where the car had been parked, examination of phone records and digital communications linked to both Celeste and the car's owner, interviews with potential witnesses, including tow yard employees, neighbors, and anyone who had last seen Celeste. Detectives also coordinated with Riverside County authorities, who had handled her original missing person report. The two jurisdictions shared information, cross-referencing timelines and case notes. At this stage, police reiterated a key point. The presence of Celeste's body in the vehicle was confirmed, but how, when, and by whom it was placed there remained unknown. For the broader public, this discovery marked a turning point. Celeste's case was no longer a missing person file tucked away in Riverside County. It was a homicide investigation tied, at least indirectly, to one of music's fastest rising artists. The world's eyes turned to Los Angeles. Reporters gathered outside the tow yard, outside the coroner's office, outside LAPD headquarters. Camera crews captured footage of candles being lit in Lake Elsinore, while simultaneously airing archival clips of D4VD performing on stage. The juxtaposition was haunting: a community in mourning, a global celebrity in silence, and investigators trying to untangle fact from speculation. At its core, the discovery was about a child, a girl who had been missing for more than a year, a family waiting for answers, and a city, and then a world, trying to understand how she ended up in the trunk of a car in Hollywood. This was the moment the story could no longer be ignored. From here, the investigation would only intensify. When detectives from the Los Angeles Police Department were called to the tow yard in early September 2025, they knew immediately that what they had on their hands was not routine. A decomposed body in the trunk of a car registered to a rising music star. This was a case that demanded precision, secrecy, and patience. Every step would be scrutinized. Every statement would be dissected. From the moment Celeste Rivas Hernandez was identified, investigators began piecing together a timeline that stretched from April 2024, when she was last reported missing, to the shocking discovery 17 months later in Hollywood. Their task was monumental: reconstruct Celeste's movements, determine when she entered that car, and establish who was responsible for her death. Forensic examination of the car, the Tesla Model 3, black and sleek, became the centerpiece of the inquiry. Transported under strict chain of custody, it was delivered to an LAPD crime lab where forensic teams began their work. First, the vehicle was photographed extensively, every panel, every surface, every detail. Then forensic examiners began a slow, systematic sweep, fingerprint and DNA collection. Swabs were taken from door handles, seats, the front trunk, and the interior surfaces. Trace evidence, fibers, hairs, and possible bodily fluids were documented. Digital forensics. Because Teslas are equipped with advanced onboard systems, investigators sought data logs, door openings, GPS records, and driver profiles. Such records can establish when the car was used, where it traveled, and by whom. At this stage, LAPD officials confirmed only that the car was registered to David Anthony Burke, known as D4VD. But whether he was the one driving it when Celeste's body was placed inside remained an open question. Investigators stress that registration alone is not proof of involvement. Meanwhile, the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner Coroner continued its work on Celeste's remains. Severe decomposition limited the immediate conclusions. Still, forensic pathologists pursued every available lead. DNA testing confirmed her identity, matching her to family members. Dental records provided additional verification. Clothing and jewelry, a tube top, black leggings, a yellow bracelet, stud earrings, and the tattoo reading "Shh" were cataloged. The coroner's office publicly acknowledged that the cause of death remained pending. Toxicology reports, which often take weeks, were underway. Examiners were also analyzing whether there were any signs of trauma to her bones or remaining tissue. These findings would determine whether her death could be classified as homicide, accidental, or otherwise. Until then, authorities refrained from speculation. Detectives next turned to people who might fill in the blanks of Celeste's disappearance. Number 1. Tow yard employees. Workers who first smelled the odor and alerted authorities provided detailed accounts of the car's condition when it arrived. Their observations helped investigators estimate how long the body may have been in the vehicle. 2. Neighbors in Hollywood Hills. Since the car had been parked illegally before being towed, LAPD canvassed the neighborhood. Residents were asked if they had noticed the Tesla, if they had security cameras, and whether they had seen anyone near the vehicle in the days before it was impounded. 3. Celeste's family and friends. Detectives revisited her original missing person case, speaking again to her relatives, classmates, and neighbors in Lake Elsinore. They reviewed her last known movements, phone records, and social media activity leading up to April 2024. Many of these interviews were painful for those involved, reopening wounds from a disappearance that had never been explained. Number 4. Associates of D4VD. Given that the car was registered in his name, detectives reached out to his management team and those in his immediate circle. At this stage, it is not known publicly what statements were given, but law enforcement confirmed that all angles were being considered. In today's cases, digital evidence can be as critical as physical. Detectives pursued multiple avenues. Tesla data logs. These can reveal the car's locations, times of entry, and even who unlocked it, depending on driver profiles. If preserved correctly, such data could establish a timeline of when Celeste's body was placed in the trunk. Cell phone records. Both Celeste's phone and any devices linked to the Tesla would be reviewed. Even deleted texts or calls can sometimes be recovered. Social media activity. Posts, videos, and photos circulating online allegedly showed Celeste at concerts or events in Los Angeles during the months before she vanished. Investigators treated these as potential leads, but stressed the need to verify dates and authenticity. Interagency coordination. Because Celeste had been reported missing in Riverside County, while her body was found in Los Angeles County, coordination between jurisdictions was essential. Detectives from both counties met to cross-reference records. Riverside investigators provided the original missing person file, while LAPD brought in their homicide division for the current case. This type of cooperation is often challenging, but crucial. A missing person case can easily lose momentum without interagency communication. Now, with new evidence, detectives had the chance to connect dots that had been overlooked before. From the moment the news broke, speculation about D4VD's involvement dominated social media. Some users claimed to see links between Celeste and the singer through tattoos, event appearances, or alleged photos. Others argued that such claims were circumstantial and unfair. Police addressed this directly. As of their latest statements, D4VD had not been named a suspect. Investigators stressed that they were following evidence, not online theories. Still, public commentary continued, creating an environment where rumor and fact blended in unsettling ways. Every major investigation encounters false leads, and this case was no different. Some early reports suggested Celeste may have been spotted in other cities after April 2024. None of these sightings were confirmed. Online claims about her appearing in music videos or with celebrities circulated widely, but investigators noted that misidentification online is common. Rumors that D4VD himself had been seen driving the Tesla near the tow yard were also unsubstantiated. LAPD has not released any such evidence. Detectives emphasize that these red herrings, while frustrating, can sometimes distract from real leads. Part of their task was to separate noise from signal. Although police withheld definitive conclusions, several working theories emerged. 1. Direct involvement. The possibility that someone close to the registered owner was involved in Celeste's death and concealment. 2. Third-party access. The idea that the vehicle may have been used by someone else entirely without Burke's knowledge. 3. Extended concealment. Given decomposition, investigators considered whether Celeste's body had been in the Tesla for months or if it had been placed there more recently before the tow. Each theory required careful testing against forensic evidence, timelines, and witness testimony. The 17 months between Celeste's disappearance and discovery loomed large. Investigators had to ask, where was she during that gap? Was she alive for part of it? Was she transported from Riverside to Los Angeles long after her disappearance? Answers to these questions would determine not only the nature of her death, but also the scope of responsibility. They would also dictate whether charges, if any, could be pursued for homicide, neglect, or other crimes. As the investigation deepened, one element stood out: silence. Neither D4VD nor his management issued an immediate public statement beyond acknowledging the gravity of the situation. Police confirmed they had spoken to him, but no details of that conversation were shared. This silence created space for rumor, but also reflected legal caution. In high-profile cases, attorneys often advise clients not to speak publicly until facts are established. Beyond forensics, beyond speculation, detectives were aware of the human stakes. At the heart of the investigation was a family who had lost their daughter. Detectives met with Celeste's relatives, updating them where possible, though many details had to be withheld to protect the integrity of the case. For the family, every unanswered question was another wound. For detectives, every step forward was measured against the responsibility to seek justice. The investigation was far from over. Toxicology results were pending. Data from the Tesla was still being analyzed. Interviews continued, and public scrutiny only intensified. What was certain was this: the discovery in that tow yard had transformed Celeste's case from a forgotten missing person report into one of the most closely watched investigations in recent memory. The discovery of Celeste Rivas Hernandez in a Tesla linked to a chart-topping artist did more than spark a police investigation. It ignited a media storm unlike anything Los Angeles had seen in years. By the morning after the announcement, the story was everywhere, splashed across the front pages of local newspapers, dominating national broadcasts, and trending worldwide on social platforms. What had begun as a grim police report quickly became a global spectacle. It started with local Los Angeles stations. Drone footage captured overhead shots of the impound lot, crime scene tape stretching across its gates. Within hours, the story migrated to national outlets: CNN, NBC, The New York Times. Each headline carried the same chilling detail: a missing teen found dead in the trunk of a car registered to music artist D4VD. The name recognition drove the coverage. True crime alone can seize public attention, but paired with celebrity, it becomes inescapable. On TikTok, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram, the case spread like wildfire. Within hours, hashtags tied to Celeste and D4VD climbed into trending categories. Short-form videos speculating about their connection amassed millions of views. Some users combed through old concert footage, pausing frames in search of Celeste's face. Others reposted photos of her tattoos, comparing them to images circulating online. While some posts came from genuine concern, others were more opportunistic, creators capitalizing on viral tragedy. Misinformation flourished, and law enforcement urged the public not to confuse online claims with verified facts. Still, once speculation began, it proved unstoppable. For D4VD's fanbase, the revelations created an emotional fracture. On one side, loyal supporters defended him passionately. He could never be involved, many wrote, pointing to his reputation for being soft-spoken and creative. They emphasized that a car registration did not prove guilt. On the other side, some fans demanded answers. The very idea that a teenager's body was found in a car tied to their idol was too disturbing to overlook. These fans pushed for transparency, asking why no official statement had come directly from the singer. The conflict spilled into online communities, fan pages, and even concerts. His music videos filled with divided comments, half defending, half condemning. As mainstream outlets tried to strike a balance, tabloids and online blogs seized the most shocking angles. Headlines grew more lurid. Teen's body linked to chart toppers Tesla shocks Hollywood. Murder mystery in the trunk of a rising star's car. Dark side of pop success? These articles blurred the line between fact and speculation, weaving alleged sightings and unverified claims into their coverage. For Celeste's family, the headlines added an additional layer of pain, their daughter's death becoming a talking point for profit. Inside the music industry, the case caused visible ripples. Concert promoters and festival organizers reportedly reviewed their contracts, weighing whether D4VD could still appear at upcoming events. Radio stations debated whether to pull his songs temporarily. Music journalists revisited his lyrics, analyzing them for perceived connections to the case. Though no evidence tied him directly to Celeste's death, the association alone created risk for business partners. In entertainment, perception can be as damaging as reality. Meanwhile, in Lake Elsinore, the community where Celeste grew up, the media frenzy felt overwhelming. Vigils were held on sidewalks and school campuses, where classmates lit candles and placed flowers near her photos. Many residents expressed anger that Celeste's disappearance had not made national headlines in 2024, yet her death only became widely covered once a celebrity's name was involved. This frustration echoed across true crime circles online, where advocates highlighted disparities in how missing person cases are reported, especially for young girls of color. The injustice of delayed coverage became part of the national conversation. For the LAPD, managing the press was nearly as challenging as managing the case itself. Detectives held briefings, but their statements were careful, almost scripted. "This is an ongoing investigation," they repeated. "We will share information as it becomes available." But the press wanted more. Cameras crowded every briefing, microphones stretched toward officers, and when answers were not given, reporters turned elsewhere, to neighbors, anonymous insiders, even online commentators posing as experts. The result was a constant flood of information, some true, some half-true, and some outright false. In that environment, it was difficult for the public to distinguish fact from theory. Outside the United States, the case also made headlines. British tabloids covered it aggressively, framing it as another Hollywood scandal. Spanish-language outlets emphasized Celeste's Latina heritage, connecting her story to broader issues of missing young women across Latin America. Music fans in Asia circulated translated updates, showing how far-reaching the case had become. For many, the story became not just about Los Angeles, but about fame, tragedy, and the blurred boundaries between private lives and public personas. Through it all, one voice was notably absent: D4VD's. While his name appeared in thousands of articles and millions of posts, he issued no immediate personal statement. His management acknowledged the gravity of the situation, but offered no details. That silence fueled even more speculation. For some, it suggested innocence, advice from lawyers to remain quiet. For others, it was seen as avoidance. In the absence of clarity, the media storm only grew. Perhaps the most unsettling element of the frenzy was how quickly the tragedy became a form of entertainment. YouTube creators produced hour-long breakdowns. TikTokers dramatized timelines. Podcasts began multi-part series within days of the discovery. Celeste's story, once invisible, was now everywhere, but consumed in ways that often prioritized suspense and shock over compassion. For her grieving family, this reality was cruel. Their loss had become public content. The media frenzy ensured that the case would not fade quietly. Every update from investigators, every rumor online, every silence from the music industry kept the story alive. It was no longer just a criminal investigation. It was a cultural event, one that revealed as much about society's obsession with fame and tragedy as it did about the crime itself. When a case captures global attention, the question inevitably shifts from discovery to justice. After Celeste Rivas Hernandez's remains were found in a car registered to D4VD, investigators faced pressure not only to gather evidence, but also to demonstrate accountability. The path forward would be shaped not just in police precincts or forensic labs, but in courtrooms, the arena where speculation must give way to proof. Initial developments. Following the discovery in September 2025, law enforcement officials confirmed that the investigation had been elevated to a homicide inquiry. While the cause of death was still pending from the coroner's office, detectives treated the case as one where foul play was strongly suspected. Despite intense public speculation, authorities were deliberate in their approach. No immediate arrests were made. Instead, prosecutors in Los Angeles County began the careful process of reviewing evidence. Forensic reports, Tesla data logs, phone records, and witness interviews were compiled into a case file. Only once prosecutors felt the evidence met the threshold for criminal charges would formal action be taken. In cases involving high-profile figures, prosecutors often turn to a grand jury. Unlike a public trial, a grand jury operates in secrecy, reviewing evidence to determine whether there is probable cause for an indictment. Legal analysts speculated that Los Angeles County could convene such a panel. This would allow prosecutors to present sensitive forensic results, witness testimony, and digital evidence without the immediate glare of cameras. If an indictment were secured, it would then move into open court, where charges would be formally read. Even before charges, attorneys for D4VD were active. Legal experts explain that in situations like this, defense teams begin by controlling exposure. Their client's silence, no interviews, no public statements, was seen as a calculated legal strategy. Anything said publicly could later be used in court. Defense lawyers would likely argue several key points. 1. Registration versus possession. A car's registration does not prove who used it at any given time. Others may have had access. 2. Timeline, uncertainty. Severe decomposition made it difficult to establish exactly when Celeste's body was placed in the Tesla. 3. Absence of direct evidence. Unless prosecutors could link fingerprints, DNA, or digital logs directly to Burke in the moments surrounding Celeste's death, a conviction would be difficult. The defense would also monitor public statements from police and prosecutors, ready to challenge anything that could prejudice a future jury. On the other side, prosecutors faced their own challenges. The weight of public expectation was immense. They needed to demonstrate that their case was built not on speculation, but on hard evidence. Key pillars of their strategy might include forensic results from the Tesla, including trace DNA and fingerprints, digital logs from the car showing who unlocked or drove it during critical windows of time, witness testimony, potentially from those who last saw Celeste alive, timeline reconstruction, connecting her disappearance in 2024 to her discovery in 2025. Prosecutors would frame the case around establishing responsibility for how a missing teenager ended up in a celebrity's car, an act they would argue was neither accidental nor coincidental. Even before legal filings, the court of public opinion was in full session. Online petitions called for justice for Celeste. Hashtags demanded transparency from LAPD and prosecutors. Some activists highlighted the broader issue of missing children, whose cases never receive such attention unless tied to fame. This public spotlight created pressure on prosecutors. proceed too slowly and they risk accusations of favoritism, move too quickly and they risk undermining the case in court. Potential legal outcomes. Several paths lay ahead. 1. No charges filed. If evidence failed to meet the legal standard, prosecutors could decline to file charges, leaving the case unresolved. 2. Manslaughter or homicide charges. Depending on coroner results and forensic evidence, prosecutors could pursue involuntary manslaughter, second-degree murder, or other homicide-related charges. 3. Accessory or obstruction charges. If evidence suggested someone helped conceal Celeste's death without being directly involved in causing it, lesser charges could apply. Each outcome carried massive implications. For Celeste's family seeking justice, for the community demanding answers, and for the celebrity whose name had been drawn into the tragedy. This case, even before a trial, revealed larger truths about the justice system. The difficulty of proving guilt beyond a reasonable doubt in cases with decomposed remains. The challenge of balancing fairness for the accused with compassion for victims. The influence of fame and public opinion on prosecutorial decisions. Legal scholars pointed out that while the public often demands quick justice, the law requires deliberate caution. A rushed case could collapse on appeal. A slow case could feel like injustice delayed. At this stage, the legal proceedings were not complete. Some pieces remained missing: the coroner's final report, the car's digital forensics, potential witness cooperation. But the outlines were clear. Celeste's death was now a matter not just of investigation, but of law. And in court, unlike in headlines or hashtags, speculation would not suffice. Only evidence would decide. When the story of Celeste Rivas Hernandez reached the public, its impact stretched far beyond Los Angeles courtrooms and police investigations. What began as a tragedy became a reckoning. For a family, for a community, for the music industry, and for the way society responds to fame, loss, and justice. For D4VD, the rising star whose car was linked to the discovery, the fallout was immediate and far-reaching. Before September 2025, his career had been on a steep incline. His singles were charting, his tours selling out, his name circulating as one of the next big artists in alternative pop. But in the days following the discovery, everything changed. Promoters quietly began reassessing whether his name could still appear on lineups. Some brands that had partnered with him paused or reconsidered contracts. Radio programmers debated whether to keep his songs in rotation. None of this was proof of guilt. Instead, it was the weight of association. A teenager's body in his registered car, regardless of legal outcomes, was enough to shake the confidence of an industry built on image as much as talent. Among fans, division hardened. Supporters launched hashtags proclaiming his innocence, pointing out that no charges had been filed and that speculation was unfair. Others could not separate the artist from the tragedy, insisting that the connection, however tenuous, was enough to walk away from his music. Concert footage from months earlier was rewatched through a new lens. Lyrics were dissected for hidden meaning. Entire online communities sprung up, some defending him fiercely, others condemning him without waiting for evidence. This split mirrored a broader cultural question: can art be separated from the artist? For Celeste's grieving family, the question felt secondary. For the industry and fans, it became unavoidable. For Celeste's family, the fallout was deeply personal. They had endured 17 months of uncertainty, only to have their daughter's death thrust into a global spotlight. At vigils, they thanked neighbors and community members for support, but they also voiced frustration. Where had this level of attention been in April 2024, when Celeste first went missing? Why did it take a connection to a famous name for the world to care? Their grief turned into advocacy. Family members began speaking not only about Celeste, but about other missing children whose names never make headlines. Their pain became a platform, reminding the public that justice is not just about one case, but about the many that remain unsolved. In Lake Elsinore, Celeste's hometown, the tragedy ignited action. Local organizations partnered with national missing children advocacy groups to raise awareness. Posters of Celeste were joined by posters of other missing teens. Community meetings focused on how to better support families when a child vanishes. online activists drew attention to the disparity in coverage. They argued that cases involving children of color often receive less attention unless linked to fame or scandal. Celeste's story became a rallying point for those pushing for more equitable treatment of missing person cases in the media. Within the music industry, the fallout sparked introspection. Executives and promoters debated how to respond when artists' names become linked to tragedy, even indirectly. The financial stakes were high: tours, sponsorships, streaming numbers. Some insiders argued that distancing from controversy was necessary, regardless of legal guilt. Others said pulling support without evidence was unfair, reflecting how quickly careers can be derailed by association alone. Behind the scenes, lawyers played a growing role. Contract clauses about morality and reputation risk were scrutinized. The fallout revealed just how fragile celebrity careers can be when public trust is shaken. Beyond industry and fandom, Celeste's case fueled broader cultural debates. The role of media. Was the coverage helpful in seeking justice or exploitative in turning tragedy into spectacle? The power of fame. Would the story have been ignored entirely if not for a celebrity connection? The line between truth and rumor. In an age of social media, how can the public distinguish fact from speculation when both spread instantly? Commentators noted that Celeste's case reflected a society both obsessed with and suspicious of celebrity. Fame amplified her story, but it also risked overshadowing her humanity, reducing her to a headline rather than a child whose life was cut short. Impact on true crime media. The fallout also rippled into the true crime genre itself. Podcasts, YouTube channels, and documentary creators seized on the case, some responsibly, others less so. Entire series were dedicated to reconstructing Celeste's timeline. Narrators emphasized the suspense, the celebrity link, the unanswered questions. But this raised ethical dilemmas. Was the coverage honoring her memory or exploiting it? For her family, seeing her name circulated globally, often alongside speculation, was a painful reminder that justice was not entertainment. The case also deepened existing skepticism about institutions. Some criticized law enforcement for not solving her disappearance earlier. Others accused media outlets of prioritizing celebrity-driven stories over ordinary victims. For many, Celeste's tragedy symbolized systemic failures in reporting, in justice, in compassion. This erosion of trust was visible in online conversations. Users questioned whether justice would ever truly be served, or whether fame and influence would shield those involved. Others worried that public outrage might pressure prosecutors into rushing a case before evidence was complete. Perhaps the most profound fallout was the emotional one. For Celeste's family, grief was compounded by visibility. For her community, the loss was both personal and symbolic. For fans of D4VD, the conflict between loyalty and doubt created emotional whiplash. And for the public, the story lingered as a haunting reminder. Behind every headline is a life, a family, a community forever changed. In the end, the fallout of Celeste's case was not only about one investigation, it was about the questions it left behind. Questions about justice, about fame, about whose stories matter and why. Her discovery in a car trunk in Hollywood reshaped conversations in music, media, and culture. But for those who loved her, the fallout was simpler, more devastating. A daughter lost, a family mourning, and a community demanding that her story not be forgotten. Every story has a beginning. Celeste Rivas Hernandez's began like so many others, a teenage girl in Lake Elsinore, full of potential, connected to family, navigating the turbulence of adolescence. Her disappearance in April 2024 was the kind of tragedy that families dread, a wound that cut deep into a quiet community. 17 months later, her story collided with another, that of a rising music star, D4VD, whose name carried the weight of fame and promise. A Tesla in Hollywood, a trunk, a discovery that turned grief into global headlines. And yet, for all the attention, one truth remains. The questions outweigh the answers. The questions that remain. How did Celeste end up in that trunk? Who placed her there? At what point between April 2024 and September 2025 did her life end? The investigation continues, but those closest to her still live with silence. Each unanswered question is a shadow cast across their days, each possibility a reminder of how fragile justice can feel. The case forces us to confront difficult realities, that fame can distort perception, that the legal system moves slower than grief, and that truth, the simple, unadorned truth, can remain out of reach even when the world is watching. Behind the speculation, behind the legal debates, behind the industry fallout, lies a teenager whose life was cut short. Celeste was not a symbol. She was not a headline. She was not a mystery to solve for entertainment. She was a daughter, a friend, a neighbor. Her absence leaves an empty seat at family gatherings, a silence where laughter used to be, a community still haunted by what might have been. For her parents, each day is a repetition of loss. For her community, the tragedy is a reminder that no one is immune to violence, not even in places where life feels ordinary, routine, safe. This story also reflects something about us, the public, about what captures our attention and why. When Celeste first went missing, the story barely left Riverside County. 17 months later, with a celebrity's name attached, it was global news. What does that say about whose stories are valued? About how we define newsworthiness? The mirror is uncomfortable, but necessary. If attention can bring accountability, why does it take celebrity to focus it? As of now, the case is still under investigation. Prosecutors weigh evidence, investigators sift through digital trails, families wait for closure. The future of this case remains unwritten. It may lead to charges, to trials, to headlines yet again, or it may remain unresolved, a mystery that lingers in the corners of public memory, resurfacing only when anniversaries or documentaries bring it back to light. The uncertainty is its own form of punishment, a kind of limbo where grief and justice are both suspended. What endures is not the speculation, nor the scandal, nor even the celebrity connection. What endures is Celeste herself. Her name is spoken at vigils. Her face is remembered on posters. Her story is told by those who refuse to let her be forgotten. In the end, that is what matters most. Not the noise of controversy, but the insistence that her life is honored, her death is acknowledged, and her memory persists beyond the sensational. As the sun sets over Hollywood, cars pass along boulevards lined with neon and billboards. Music plays, careers rise and fall, stories come and go. But somewhere, in the memory of a trunk discovered in September 2025, the world is reminded that behind fame and fortune, there are still tragedies that demand answers. The case of Celeste Rivas Hernandez is not just about a teenager lost or a singer pulled into headlines. It is about the fragile line between silence and justice, between memory and forgetting. And until that line is crossed, until the questions find answers, until accountability is reached, her story remains unfinished. This is the story of Celeste Rivas Hernandez, a story still waiting for its ending, and new developments are still coming in. Make sure you hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter as we uncover more. We'll be following this case closely, and you'll want to be here when the next pieces of the puzzle fall into place.